The great ballroom of Arendale Palace sparkled like a dream. Chandeliers glittered overhead, nobles waltzed across the marble floors, and servants carried trays of gold-rimmed goblets filled with honey wine. And in the center of it all stood Princess Seraphina of Arendale. Radiant, polite, perfect. Her smile was poised. Her posture flawless. Every flick of her wrist and tilt of her head seemed choreographed by the gods themselves. At least, that's what everyone saw. What they didn't see, or rather what they weren't supposed to hear, was the chaos storming inside her head. If one more prince asks me about embroidery, I swear I'll stab myself with a needle. The thought slipped from her mind with the ease of a sigh. But this time, it didn't stay in her head. The music faltered. Someone gasped. And then silence. Every noble within earshot froze, including the handsome Prince of Veradin, who had just proudly announced his deep interest in the art of tapestry. Seraphina's eyes widened. Oh no! The prince blinked, face pale as milk. Why, your highness? The queen's fan snapped open like a weapon. The king coughed loudly, trying to disguise the disaster. A few servants turned away, faces trembling with suppressed laughter. Seraphina could feel her pulse pounding in her ears. This isn't happening. It can't be happening. And yet, it was. Wonderful. I've just insulted the future of Veradin's textile trade. Father's going to murder me. The murmurs grew louder. Courtiers exchanged horrified glances. The musicians awkwardly resumed their tune, too late to save the moment. From her place on the dais, the queen leaned toward her husband. Did she just say that out loud? I believe she thought it out loud, the king muttered, rubbing his temples. Seraphina curtsied stiffly, cheeks burning. My deepest apologies, Prince Edwin. My mind appears to have escaped me. The poor prince attempted a smile. And no harm done, your highness. Though perhaps, we might discuss something less sharp than needles next time. If I could discuss anything less dull, I would. The prince winced. The queen dropped her fan with a clatter. Oh, for heaven's sake, Seraphina whispered, covering her mouth. The banquet continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. Everywhere she went, people eyed her like she was a ticking bomb. Elegant, yes, but one thought away from detonation. She tried to keep quiet, to smile, to pretend she wasn't mortified. But the harder she tried, the louder her mind became. Why are all these men staring at me like I'm a prized horse? Does anyone actually enjoy these ridiculous curtsies? How does mother manage to stay awake during these speeches? Laughter rippled through the hall, some muffled, some outright shameless. Seraphina clenched her fists. Oh no, she muttered under her breath. They can all hear me, can't they? Apparently so, came a dry voice from beside her. Her older brother, Prince Lucian, stood there, arms crossed, smirking like a man who'd waited years for this entertainment. Well, dear sister, your inner voice has become public property. Seraphina glared. Stop smiling. This is a royal catastrophe. Lucian chuckled. On the contrary, this is the most entertaining event this palace has hosted in decades. Lucian, she hissed. He leaned closer, voice low. Don't worry. Father's too busy pretending this isn't happening to scold you right now. But later. I'm doomed. Maybe I can fake an illness. A long one. Like lifelong exile long. Lucian nearly doubled over laughing. Oh, Seraphina. Never change. Don't you dare laugh, she snapped. The king's advisor approached nervously, clearing his throat. Your Majesty, perhaps the princess could retire early? Before she accidentally offends the entire Western Alliance. An excellent suggestion, the queen said tightly. Seraphina, to your chambers. Now. Seraphina's thoughts screamed, gladly. And this time, everyone heard it. The nobles burst into polite, scandalized laughter. When the heavy doors of her chamber closed behind her, Seraphina slumped against them, groaning. What in the world is wrong with me? She muttered. Her lady-in-waiting, a timid girl named Anya, peeked out from behind a curtain. Your Highness. People say it's some kind of magic. A curse, perhaps. A curse. Seraphina groaned louder. Wonderful. I finally get magic, and it's the kind that ruins my reputation. Maybe the gods just got bored and decided to humiliate me personally. Anya's eyes widened. Oh, it's still happening. Seraphina threw herself onto her bed with a dramatic sigh. Perfect. I'm the first princess in history whose thoughts need royal etiquette lessons. She stared up at the ceiling, feeling the weight of her crown even when it wasn't there. Somewhere in the palace, her parents were undoubtedly panicking, her brother was laughing himself sick, and the entire court was whispering. And for the first time, Princess Seraphina wasn't thinking about duty or decorum. She was thinking, if one more prince proposes, I'll throw my crown at him. The next morning dawned bright and painfully cheerful. The kind of morning that mocked the miserable. Princess Seraphina buried her face under a velvet pillow. I'm not getting up. Let them crown the cat. She'd probably do a better job. Her lady-in-waiting, Anya, froze mid-step. Your Highness, it's still happening. Seraphina groaned. Fantastic. I was hoping it was just a bad dream. Knock. Knock. Seraphina, came her mother's voice, regal, composed, and sharp enough to slice steel. Breakfast. Now. Oh, perfect. A royal lecture served with toast. The Queen's voice through the door was tight. And please, control your expressions. Can't exactly control what's not under my control. Seraphina snapped, tossing off her blanket. Her hair was a mess, her nightgown wrinkled, her royal dignity in tatters. Still, she smoothed her skirts, took a deep breath, and marched into the royal breakfast chamber. Her family was already waiting. The king sat at the head of the long table, his expression grave. The queen beside him looked tired, one hand clutching her teacup as if it were the only thing keeping her calm. Prince Lucien lounged at the far end, smirking like the devil himself. Good morning, sunshine, he said. If I stab him with a butter knife, will they call it treason or therapy? Lucien choked on his tea. The king slammed his hand on the table. Enough. Father, I didn't even say. You thought, Seraphina, the queen interjected. And apparently that is quite enough these days. Seraphina winced. I didn't ask for this curse. Curse. Lucien drawled. I call it entertainment. I call you insufferable. Ha! Lucien pointed his fork. See? She agrees. The queen sighed heavily. Seraphina, this is not amusing. The entire court is in uproar. Prince Edwin has returned home claiming you mocked his homeland's craft. I didn't say it. But you thought it, her father said sternly. And the result is the same. Seraphina pressed her lips together. So what am I supposed to do? Never think again. Lucien grinned. That would certainly be a change. Lucien, the queen snapped. He raised his hands innocently. Just saying, perhaps the princess should practice restraint. Or wear a gag. If anyone's getting gagged, it'll be you. Lucien nearly fell out of his chair laughing. The king buried his face in his hands. By the gods, this family. When breakfast ended in utter chaos, with Seraphina storming out, Lucien still laughing, and the queen muttering about exorcists, Seraphina retreated to the palace gardens. The air was fresher there, away from stifling walls and judgmental stares. She sat by the fountain, plucking petals from a rose. What am I supposed to do, Anya? I can't go anywhere without blurting my every thought. Anya hesitated. Maybe, it's not a curse, Your Highness. Maybe it's a blessing? Seraphina gave her a flat look. If this is a blessing, I'd hate to see divine punishment. Anya tried to smile. People say your honesty is refreshing. The servants adore you now. They say you say what everyone's thinking but can't. That made Seraphina pause. Refreshing? That was new. Usually she was graceful, dutiful, polished. Never refreshing. Really? She asked softly. Anya nodded. They said it was the first time they saw nobles laugh at their own arrogance. You made everyone feel human. Seraphina blinked. Human. Not perfect. Not porcelain. A strange warmth bloomed in her chest. She almost smiled, until a shadow fell across the garden path. Your Highness, said a low voice. It was Sir Rowan, the captain of the palace guard, stoic, disciplined, and utterly terrifying when delivering bad news. The king requests your presence in the council chamber, he said. Immediately. Wonderful. A royal trial. Can't wait. Rowan's lips twitched, the faintest hint of amusement. I'll escort you. Do I have a choice? No, Your Highness. Seraphina sighed and rose, muttering, At least when they exile me, I hope they send me somewhere with good tea. And no princes. Rowan's shoulders trembled as he tried not to laugh. For the first time since the disaster began, Seraphina smiled. Maybe honesty wasn't the worst thing in the world, even if it came with consequences. As she followed Rowan toward the council chamber, one thought rang clear and true in her mind. If I'm going down, I might as well go down honestly. If Princess Seraphina thought her truth curse would make people avoid her, she couldn't have been more wrong. Within a week, the palace gates were flooded with carriages, banners, and bouquets. Every eligible noble in the realm, and half from neighboring kingdoms, had come to see the honest princess. It was as if word of her misfortune had transformed into a festival attraction. Wonderful. I'm the kingdom's latest entertainment act. Step right up and watch the princess humiliate herself live. Anya hurried beside her, whispering urgently, Your Highness, please remember, just try to think less. Seraphina blinked. Think less. Yes. Anya clasped her hands. Empty your mind. Like a pond. Come. Peaceful. Seraphina inhaled deeply. Right. Peaceful. She stepped into the grand audience hall. Dozens of suitors lined the marble floor. Princes, dukes, lords, all dressed to impress. Jewels glimmered, perfume choked the air, and smiles stretched too wide to be sincere. They all looked like peacocks who fell into a gold mine. The room fell silent. One lord dropped his hat. Your Highness, said the herald nervously, this is Lord Cedric of Belmere. He is heir to the world's most ridiculous haircut, apparently. The entire court tried not to laugh. Lucian, standing discreetly behind the king, failed spectacularly. Lord Cedric's expression stiffened. Your Highness, I assure you this style is quite fashionable in Belmere. Of course it is, Seraphina said quickly, face flushing. Fashionable among donkeys, maybe. The queen pinched the bridge of her nose. 3 suitors later, it was clear that this curse wasn't going anywhere, and neither was her embarrassment. Prince Roderick of Thalwyn attempted poetry. Lord Percival compared her eyes to moonlit sapphires. And Duke Horace, an aging man with more mustache than sense, proposed on the spot. If he kneels any slower, we'll both be skeletons by the time he finishes. Lucian nearly collapsed behind his chair. Seraphina, the queen hissed. I can't help it, she whispered back. I want to, but this entire room smells like desperation and hair oil. Enough, the king roared, his patience snapping. The suitors froze. Seraphina winced. Father, out, he said tightly. All of you. The courtship process is postponed until further notice. The nobles bowed awkwardly and hurried from the hall. Lucian followed them, still laughing under his breath. Seraphina sank into her chair, head in her hands. Can I just disappear now? Or maybe join a convent? Do nuns get to think whatever they want? The queen sighed. Seraphina, this is unsustainable. You cannot meet every noble in the kingdom while this continues. I didn't ask for this. Seraphina shot back. If I could silence my thoughts, I'd do it. The king rubbed his temples. We've summoned scholars, priests, even a mage from Alarin. Perhaps they'll know something. Wonderful, Seraphina muttered. Maybe they can turn me into a statue. Then I'll finally be the perfect princess. And people can admire me without hearing how bored I am. Later that evening, she escaped to the palace courtyard for air. She sat by the fountain again, staring at her reflection in the water. Maybe Anya was right, she murmured. Maybe I should just stop thinking. Easier said than done when my brain won't shut up for 5 seconds. A quiet chuckle interrupted her sulking. Talking to yourself again, Your Highness? Seraphina looked up sharply. A young man stood near the edge of the courtyard, holding a basket of garden tools. His clothes were simple, worn boots, rolled sleeves, and dirt-streaked hands, but his smile was disarmingly genuine. She frowned. Who are you? Elias, Your Highness. Gardener's apprentice. Oh good, someone who doesn't bow every 3 seconds. Elias raised a brow. That's a new one. Usually I get yelled at for not bowing enough. Seraphina blinked. Wait, you heard that? He nodded. Everyone hears you. But unlike the others, I don't mind. You don't. Elias smiled faintly. At least with you, what you think and what you say actually match. Makes you more human than most of us in this palace. Seraphina stared at him for a long moment. No one had ever said something like that to her. Not her family, not the nobles, no one. For once, her mind went quiet. Then, softly, I like him. Elias grinned. That I heard. Seraphina groaned, covering her face with both hands. Oh, saints preserve me. Why couldn't the curse stop now? He laughed, a low warm sound that made her forget her embarrassment for a heartbeat. Maybe, he said, the gods are trying to tell you something. She peeked through her fingers. What's that supposed to mean? Maybe your thoughts aren't the problem, Elias said simply. Maybe everyone else's silence is. Seraphina blinked. That's annoyingly insightful for a gardener. Elias chuckled again. And yet true. That night, as she lay in bed, Seraphina stared at the canopy above her and thought, maybe this curse isn't meant to punish me. Maybe it's meant to free me. The thought hung in the still air. Soft, dangerous, and liberating. And for once, she didn't care who heard it. Morning sunlight spilled across the palace gardens, brushing the dew from the roses and glinting off the marble fountains. The royal gardeners moved quietly through the hedges, trimming, pruning, sweeping. And in the middle of them, very much out of place, sat Princess Seraphina, knees tucked beneath her gown, hair unbraided, watching Elias repair a broken trellis. If Mother saw me sitting in the dirt, she'd faint. Twice. Elias didn't look up from his work. Your Highness, you might be the first princess I've seen who actually likes being outside. I like being away from people who pretend to like me, she said lightly, then winced. Oh, that sounded bitter. Elias smiled without pausing. It sounded honest. Of course he'd say that. He's infuriatingly calm. He chuckled. You keep forgetting I can hear you. Seraphina covered her face with her hands. I was hoping you'd pretend not to. Never, he said simply. You make the gardens more interesting. Stop smiling like that, Elias. You'll make me forget I'm miserable. His hand stilled on the wood, and for a second, she thought he might actually blush. Instead, he cleared his throat. You really don't filter anything, do you? Not anymore, she muttered. Apparently my brain decided privacy was overrated. He laughed softly, and the sound warmed the morning air. From the balcony above, Prince Lucien leaned over the railing, watching the scene with great amusement. Well, well, he murmured to himself. Our dear sister has found a new hobby. Gardening, or the gardener? He turned and strode back into the palace, already imagining the look on their mother's face when she heard. By noon, word had spread through every corridor. The princess was spending her mornings with a commoner. The queen cornered Seraphina at lunch, voice sharp but controlled. Seraphina. A word. Here it comes, Seraphina thought. They retreated into the solar, sunlight spilling across the polished table. The queen clasped her hands. A princess does not fraternize with servants. Especially when the entire court is already questioning her reputation. Elias isn't a servant, Seraphina said quietly. He's a gardener. That makes no difference. It makes all the difference. The queen's eyes flashed. Seraphina. Mother, Seraphina interrupted, surprising herself. For once, someone talks to me like I'm a person, not a portrait. He doesn't bow, he doesn't flatter, and he doesn't care about titles. You are a princess. And I'm tired of it. The words echoed through the room, startling even Seraphina. The queen froze, her composure cracking. What did you just? I said I'm tired of it, Seraphina said, her voice trembling. I'm tired of pretending to be perfect. Of smiling until my face hurts. Of saying nothing when everything inside me wants to scream. The queen stared at her, speechless. She doesn't understand. She never will. But this time, the queen didn't scold her. She only whispered, almost too softly to hear. Do you think I've never felt the same? Seraphina blinked. What? The queen turned away. You think I was born to this life? That I enjoy pretending every day. For a moment, the air between them shifted. Two women, both trapped by expectation, neither free. Then, like a curtain falling, the queen's mask returned. But feelings do not rule kingdoms, Seraphina. Duty does. And duty is what kills us slowly, isn't it? The queen's jaw tightened. Enough. You will stay away from the gardener. That is final. Seraphina spent that evening pacing her chamber, her mind a storm. Every time she tried to calm herself, she heard Elias's words in her head. Maybe your thoughts aren't the problem. Maybe everyone else's silence is. She stood by the window, looking out at the moonlit garden below. And then she saw him. Elias was there, kneeling by the fountain, tending to the roses as always. Before she could stop herself, she was already halfway down the stairs. Your Highness. Elias looked up as she approached, slightly startled. You shouldn't be out here this late. Neither should you, she said softly. I just needed to see someone who doesn't lie to me. He tilted his head. Rough day. The usual. Politics. Lectures. Threats of eternal disgrace. Elias chuckled. Sounds delightful. Seraphina's lips twitched. I suppose I should thank you actually. Talking to you makes me forget I'm cursed. He met her gaze. Then maybe you're not. Stop saying things that make my heart do that fluttering thing. He grinned. There it is again. She groaned, laughing despite herself. You're impossible. Maybe, he said, but you're smiling. She was. And for the first time since the curse began, it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like the truth setting her free. Later, when she returned to her room, the queen's words replayed in her mind. Feelings do not rule kingdoms. But as Seraphina touched her chest, where her heart still raced from the sound of Elias's laugh, another thought rose quietly inside her. Maybe it's time they did. By the end of that week, every noble in Arendale had heard the same rumor. The princess had fallen for a gardener. Of course, no one said it directly to Seraphina's face. No one ever dared. But whispers have a way of echoing louder than shouts inside palace walls. Wherever she went, courtiers turned away too quickly, servants bowed too deeply, and her mother's attendants followed her like shadows. Ah, so this is what scandal feels like. A little terrifying, a little freeing. The king summoned her to the council chamber that morning, where his advisors sat in a semicircle of judgment. The queen was there, too, expression unreadable. Seraphina stood before them, head high, though her palms felt clammy. Your Highness, began Chancellor Durin, his voice oily with false politeness, there are concerns regarding your recent associations. Just say it. You all think I've disgraced the crown. The Chancellor coughed. It is unseemly for a princess to be seen so often with a person. Seraphina interjected coolly. Yes, I've been seen with one of those. Lucian, sitting in the back like a bored spectator, nearly choked on laughter. The king's glare silenced everyone. Seraphina, enough. Father, I've done nothing wrong. Elias is kind. Intelligent. He's a commoner. The words hung heavy in the air. Seraphina met her father's eyes. And I am a person, not just a princess. Why should birth decide who I speak to? The council shifted uncomfortably. Because it always has, she thought bitterly, and they can't imagine a world where it doesn't. The queen's voice was calm but firm. Seraphina, your reputation reflects the crown's. If you wish to be taken seriously as heir, you must act the part. And what part is that, mother? The silent one? The obedient one? The one who never laughs, never cries, never feels? Lucian leaned forward, muttering. She has a point. Lucian, the king warned. Seraphina took a breath, fighting the lump in her throat. You want a perfect princess, not a real one. But the people do not decide royal marriages, the king snapped. No, but they'll remember who treated them like equals. The queen closed her eyes briefly, as if that truth stung. The king waved a hand. This discussion is over. You are confined to the palace until further notice. And the gardener? Seraphina's heart stopped. What about him? He will be dismissed at once. No. Please. Not because of me. Father, you can't. I can, he said heavily. And I must. By the time Seraphina reached the garden, the guards were already there. Elias stood calmly beside the fountain, a single bag slung over his shoulder. I figured this was coming, he said quietly. I tried to stop it, she whispered. He smiled faintly. I know. Don't smile like that. It hurts more. I guess I'll go back to Alarin, he continued. There's always work for gardeners. Seraphina stepped closer. You can't leave. I'll fix this. He met her gaze. You can't fix everything, princess. Don't call me that right now. He hesitated. Then, softer, Seraphina. Her breath caught. You taught me something, he said. That honesty isn't weakness. Even when it costs everything. She shook her head, tears burning her eyes. I didn't teach you that. You already knew. He smiled again, that infuriating gentle smile. Then maybe we taught each other. Say something stupid, Seraphina. Anything to make him stay. But all that came out was a whisper. You'll come back, won't you? He hesitated just long enough to make it hurt. If the truth still matters when I do. Then he turned and walked away, leaving the scent of roses and heartbreak behind. That night, Seraphina stood alone in her chambers, staring out at the dark gardens below. This is what the crown costs. The people you love. The parts of yourself you're not allowed to keep. Her mother's words from days before came back to her. Feelings do not rule kingdoms. And for the first time Seraphina whispered aloud, maybe they should. Down below, a few servants whispered that the princess had changed, that her eyes were sharper now, her voice steadier, her smile rarer but real. In the council, nobles murmured that she was becoming dangerous. But among the common people, stories spread like wildfire of the princess who spoke her mind. And while Seraphina didn't know it yet, those stories were already reshaping the kingdom. The palace had never been so quiet, and yet so loud. Servants tiptoed through corridors, whispering behind cupped hands. Advisors muttered in corners, nobles argued in hushed tones, and the queen's expression had settled into a mask of weary grace. The cause of it all? Princess Seraphina. She hadn't meant to start anything. Truly she hadn't. But after Elias was dismissed, something inside her refused to stay silent. So when the royal council gathered the following week to discuss matters of public order, and a nobleman sneered about peasants overstepping their place, Seraphina spoke. And because her curse had no sense of timing, she thought at the same time. Overstepping? You mean breathing? The entire chamber froze. Chancellor Durin sputtered. Why, your highness? Seraphina rose slowly, eyes flashing. No, let's hear him out. What is their place, Chancellor? On their knees? Working while you sip imported wine and call it leadership? Gasps echoed through the hall. The king's knuckles whitened around his scepter. Seraphina. I'm not finished, she said sharply. If they want to silence me again, they'll have to drag me out. Her voice carried, strong and clear. The people are starving while nobles compete to see who can build the biggest fountain. You sit here, terrified of losing power, while they're terrified of losing hope. The queen's lips parted, shock flickering beneath her composure. Lucien leaned back, murmuring, well, this is going to be legendary. The chamber erupted into arguments, nobles shouting, advisors panicking, guards shifting uneasily. Through it all, Seraphina stood tall, her heart pounding but her voice unwavering. Maybe Elias was right. Maybe silence is the real curse. The king slammed his hand against the table. Enough. The sound echoed like thunder. He rose, face red with fury. You will not bring this chaos into my council room. Seraphina met his gaze without flinching. Chaos? Father, this is the truth. The kingdom's cracking, and you refuse to see it. He stared at her for a long, unbearable moment. Then, quietly, leave us. She did, but not before every advisor in the room saw the way her father's hands trembled. That evening, as she walked through the halls, nobles avoided her gaze. Some bowed stiffly, others turned away, but a few smiled. Real smiles. The kind that carried respect. They think I'm brave. Or foolish. Probably both. When she reached the courtyard, a guard stopped her. Your Highness, he said quietly, glancing around. "A messenger left this for you." He handed her a folded letter sealed with red wax. The seal wasn't royal. It was a simple rose pressed into the wax. Her heart skipped. She broke it open. "Seraphina. The truth still matters. E." She read it 3 times, her pulse quickening. Elias was alive, somewhere beyond the palace walls. And he hadn't forgotten. By morning, half the court had heard about the council incident. The other half was pretending they hadn't. When Seraphina entered the dining hall, her brother Lucien waved her over with a grin. "You've started quite the revolution, sister dear." She rolled her eyes. "I gave a speech. You declared war on half the nobility. They needed it." Lucien chuckled. "I'm not disagreeing. Just warning you. Father's advisors are talking about controlling your condition. They're terrified of what you'll say next." "I'm terrified of what they'll keep not saying," she muttered. The queen entered then, as regal and restrained as ever. But when her gaze met Seraphina's, something subtle passed between them, a flicker of worry, pride, and understanding. That afternoon, Seraphina stood on her balcony overlooking the city. From up here, she could see the people, the markets, the children playing, the workers coming home. And in the distance, banners fluttered on rooftops. At first, she thought it was a coincidence. Then she noticed what was painted on them. A simple gold crown with open eyes beneath it. A symbol. "They're listening." Her voice trembled, not with fear but awe. The people had taken her honesty and turned it into hope. "Your Highness," said Anya, breathless as she burst into the room. "There are crowds gathering outside the palace gates. They're chanting your name." Seraphina's heart raced. "What are they saying?" Anya hesitated. "They're calling you the honest princess. They say you speak for them." Seraphina turned back toward the window, watching the golden banners dance in the wind. "The king will see this as rebellion. But maybe rebellion is just another word for truth that refuses to bow." She straightened, shoulders squared, chin lifted. The crown she wore suddenly felt lighter, not because it had changed, but because she finally understood its weight. That night, as the moon rose high over Arendale, the council chambers burned with candlelight and panic. "The people are restless," the advisors murmured. "She's undermining royal authority. She's beloved. If we silence her, it could spark revolt." And in the center of it all, the king sat silent, staring at the empty chair where his daughter should have been. Meanwhile, in the quiet of the gardens, Seraphina whispered to the stars, "If the truth is rebellion, then let them call me a rebel." Her reflection shimmered in the fountain water, steady and strong. For the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of her own voice. And far beyond the palace walls, in a small cottage lit by a single lantern, Elias smiled as he read the same words written in her latest public decree. A ruler should fear lies, not truth. The palace never slept anymore. Guards doubled their patrols. Courtiers spoke in clipped sentences. Even the chandeliers seemed to tremble in the tension hanging thick through the halls. In the middle of it all, Princess Seraphina stood before the throne, the king's gaze heavy upon her. He looked older now. Tired. But his voice, when it came, carried the same iron authority as always. "Seraphina of Arendale," he said formally. "You have sown discord among our people, defied royal order, and humiliated this crown. And yet," she thought bitterly, "the people love me more than they ever did before." Out loud she said, "I spoke the truth. If that humiliates the crown, perhaps the crown should listen." A murmur swept through the court. Shock, admiration, outrage, all colliding in one collective gasp. The queen, seated beside the king, laid a gentle hand on his arm. "My love." He shook her off. "Enough. Seraphina, your defiance ends here. Here we go. Another lecture about duty and sacrifice." "I have arranged a solution," the king said, voice softer now, which somehow made it worse. "A marriage. You will wed Prince Alaric of Vildain within a fortnight. His alliance will stabilize the realm." For a heartbeat, the world stopped. Then Seraphina laughed. Not mockingly, just disbelievingly. "Father," she said, voice trembling, "you can't be serious." "I am." "You want to fix political unrest by marrying me off like a bargaining chip?" "It is what's best for the kingdom." No, it's what's best for your image. Her thoughts slipped out, echoing across the silent room. The king's face darkened. Watch your tone. I've watched it my entire life, she snapped. Every smile, every word, every moment of pretending to be the perfect daughter. And for what? To be traded away to a prince I've never even met. The queen's eyes glistened. Seraphina, please. No, mother. She took a step forward, heart hammering. You taught me to be graceful, kind, composed. But you never taught me how to be free. Lucian, who had been leaning against a pillar, finally spoke. She's right, father. The king's head whipped toward him. Not now. Yes, now, Lucian said calmly. Because the people are listening. They already call her the honest princess. If you cage her, you'll lose them all. The court fell into stunned silence. He said it. He actually said it. The king's expression faltered. Just for a moment. You would side against your crown? Lucian's voice softened. I'd side with the truth. The king stood abruptly. Enough. You leave me no choice. He turned to the guards. Confine the princess to her chambers until the wedding. Seraphina's heart lurched. You can't. But they could. And they did. The heavy oak doors slammed shut behind her, sealing her inside her room. For hours, she paced like a caged bird, fury and heartbreak twisting inside her chest. A marriage to a stranger. A kingdom built on silence. No one's coming to save me this time. A knock broke her thoughts. Lucian? She whispered. The door creaked open, revealing her brother holding a small velvet pouch. You didn't think I'd let them keep you locked up, did you? She blinked. What, how? He smirked. I have a knack for sneaking into places I'm not supposed to be. Also, the guards outside your door are asleep. You're welcome. He tossed her the pouch. Inside was a small key. The servant's passage behind your wardrobe, he explained. It leads to the gardens. You'll know what to do from there. Her pulse quickened. Lucian, if father finds out. He will, he said simply. But maybe he needs to see what happens when you try to cage a wildfire. She smiled faintly. You sound like Elias. Then maybe he's smarter than I thought. He leaned in, kissing her forehead. Go, sister. Be the truth they believe in. Minutes later, Seraphina slipped through the hidden corridor, the walls cool and narrow. When she emerged into the moonlit gardens, the air hit her like freedom. She ran, past the roses, past the fountain where she'd first met Elias, until she reached the outer gate. A lone figure waited in the shadows. Her breath caught. Elias. He turned, that familiar half-smile lighting his face. You really do know how to cause trouble, Your Highness. She laughed shakily. You heard. Everyone has. The people are ready to stand with you, Seraphina. But they need to see you lead. Lead. Not hide. Not obey. For a moment, she looked back at the towering palace. The place that had been her home, her cage, her battlefield. Then she turned back to Elias and took his hand. Then let's give them something worth believing in. At dawn, as the first light touched the kingdom, the gates of Arendale opened. Not for soldiers, but for its princess. She stepped onto the balcony of the central square, voice clear and strong as bells. My people, she said, I was taught that truth is dangerous. But I have learned that silence is worse. If you will have me, not as a perfect princess, but as an honest one, I will fight for you. Cheers rose like thunder. The king watched from the palace window, eyes shadowed, pride and sorrow warring in his chest. The queen whispered, She's doing what you never could. And for the first time, he didn't deny it. The central square of Arendale was packed. From dawn, commoners poured in, spilling into every street, alley, and plaza. Merchants abandoned stalls, children perched on rooftops, and nobles, curious or terrified, lined the balconies. And there at the raised platform stood Princess Seraphina, crowned slightly askew, hair loose in the morning breeze, eyes blazing with determination. If I survive this, I may never need tea again. She took a deep breath, letting the murmurs of the crowd wash over her. Every whispered doubt, every cheer, every silent prayer reached her ears. Elias stood to the side, quietly holding a folded scroll. He gave her a small nod, and she swallowed hard. Her thoughts, usually impossible to hide, remained calm for the first time in days. No lies. No pretending. Just me. She stepped forward. People of Arendale, she called, voice ringing like silver bells. I have been taught to smile, to bow, to obey. I have been taught that truth is dangerous, and silence is virtuous. But I have learned otherwise. A hush fell over the crowd, expectant and electric. The truth is not dangerous. Silence is. When the rulers hide from reality, the people suffer. When we speak honestly, change begins. And yes, I may have offended a few nobles along the way. Too bad. They can survive honesty. She glanced at the palace balcony. The king and queen watched silently, the courtiers stiff and pale. I have been a princess all my life, she continued. I have worn the crown and the gown, smiled for the cameras, bent my thoughts to duty. But my heart and this kingdom deserve more than polite lies. The crowd erupted into cheers. Shouts of "Long live the honest princess!" echoed off the stone walls. Finally. They understand me. Seraphina raised her hands, calling for silence. I will rule Arendale, not as a statue of perfection, but as a human being who listens, who learns, who fights for every voice. Nobles, commoners, peasants, guards, servants, you all have a place here. And I will not forget it. From the crowd came tears, laughter, applause. Some shouted her name. Others simply bowed their heads in gratitude. She looked to Elias, who smiled proudly. See, he whispered. Your words matter. You matter. And now I get to lead. Without pretending. The king stepped forward, flanked by advisors. His expression was unreadable. Seraphina, he said finally, voice low but steady. You have spoken boldly. Too boldly perhaps. But your people listen. And in that you have shown wisdom. The queen placed a hand on his arm. Our daughter is ready. Seraphina's pulse raced. She hadn't expected forgiveness, hadn't wanted it. But the acknowledgement of her strength, from the very people who shaped her life, made her chest swell. This is real. Not a court performance. Not a lesson in obedience. Real. She turned back to the crowd. Arendale is ours. Not mine, not your rulers alone, but ours together. And together, we will build a kingdom of truth, courage, and hope. The square shook with cheers. Flags waved. Drums thundered. Bells rang. And from the farthest corner, where the palace gardens met the city streets, Elias stepped forward, his eyes shining. We did it, she thought. He took her hand, squeezing gently. No, you did it. I just watched. I didn't just speak for myself. I spoke for all of us. The king and queen remained on the balcony, silent but unyielding. But the tension had shifted. The crown on Seraphina's head no longer felt heavy. It felt right. Her gaze swept over the crowd, over the banners, over the people who had once been voiceless. If the crown can carry a kingdom, it can carry honesty too. And in that moment, for the first time, Princess Seraphina of Arendale knew she would never be silent again. The kingdom had heard her thoughts, and they had chosen to follow. Morning light bathed Arendale in gold. For the first time in decades, the palace didn't feel like a cage. It felt like a home in harmony with its people. Princess Seraphina stepped onto the balcony once more, her crown shining in the rising sun, hair cascading freely over her shoulders. Behind her the city stirred. Merchants opened their stalls, children ran through the streets, and nobles, some still stiff, some cautiously smiling, observed quietly. This is what it feels like to be seen, not just looked at. The council chambers had been transformed overnight. Advisors who once whispered about control and obedience now brought her proposals for public works, education, and fair taxation. Her father, the king, had not spoken much yet, but his eyes held a different weight, respect, perhaps even pride. The queen approached, regal as ever, yet softened by a faint smile. Seraphina, she said, you have changed more than just this palace. I've only shown them what was already here, Seraphina replied, glancing at the streets below. The people needed a voice. I just gave them mine. From the shadows of the crowd, Elias emerged, carrying a basket of freshly picked roses. He knelt before her, offering the flowers with a quiet, confident smile. He still doesn't bow, and I love him for it. You're not supposed to be here, she whispered, though her lips curved into a genuine smile. And yet I am, he said softly. Because some things are worth risking everything for. Seraphina accepted the roses, brushing her fingers against his. And what happens now, Elias? Now, he said, standing beside her, we rebuild. Together. Together. That's a word I never thought I'd hear in this palace. The king finally stepped forward, flanked by his advisors. His voice was strong, carrying across the square. People of Arendale, your princess has spoken. She has reminded us that honesty is courage, and courage is the foundation of a kingdom. I yield to her judgment, and I pledge to support her rule. Gasps of surprise swept the crowd, followed by thunderous applause. Seraphina felt tears prick her eyes, not of fear, but of relief and triumph. Lucien clapped her shoulder, laughing quietly. Told you. Chaos looks good on you. Shut up, she said, punching him lightly, though she couldn't help smiling. I never imagined ruling could feel like this. Alive, exhilarating, terrifying, real. The people cheered, waving banners and shouting her name. The kingdom had chosen her, and she had chosen them. Later, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, Seraphina and Elias walked through the palace gardens. For the first time, they walked not as princess and gardener, but as equals, hand in hand. I wonder if the crown will ever feel heavy again. She glanced at it, perched atop her head, glinting in the evening light. No. Because now it's mine, not just a weight, but a responsibility I want to carry. Elias squeezed her hand. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Seraphina smiled, eyes bright with determination and joy. Yes, together. The honest princess of Arendale, she thought, laughing softly. I like the sound of that. And under the stars, the kingdom celebrated not just a princess, but the dawn of a new era, a kingdom ruled by truth, courage, and heart. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more original novel stories. And stay tuned, our next story is coming soon.